Welcome back. Welcome back, class. We are talking about the Cold War today, and we are talking about something that happened during the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis. This happened in 1962, about a year before JFK's death. Uh, the Cubans were in allies with the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union were bringing their nuclear missiles over to Cuba and had them pointed at the United States. And one of our spy planes came along and saw this, and it caused a big uproar. And people thought they were going to go to war. That's how close it came. They thought they were going to go to war with each other and possibly a nuclear war. And it scared everybody in the United States because it's about a 13-day period or so. And but finally they got it settled, and nobody went to war. Nothing happened. So but that's what we're talking about today: the Cuban Missile Crisis. All right, so we talked about the Bay of Pigs. The United States had attempted to overthrow Fidel Castro and the current government of Cuba with the Bay of Pigs invasion, but they failed. But it did serve as a warning to Fidel Castro. And also, the United States had installed several nuclear missile sites in Turkey and Italy with the range to strike Moscow. So the Soviet Union was not happy with this. Well, they were looking to place some missiles close to the United States. So they were allies with Cuba, and that's what they started doing. This was leading up to the crisis.
Prior to the crisis, the United States had attempted to overthrow Fidel Castro and the current government of Cuba with the Bay of Pigs invasion. The invasion failed, but it served as a warning to Fidel Castro. Also, the United States had installed several nuclear missile sites in Turkey and Italy with the range to strike Moscow, the capital of the Soviet Union.
All right. So the Soviet Union felt like, all right, we need some missile sites that could strike at the United States because of this. At the same time, the Cuban government, they wanted protection from the United States because the United States had tried to overthrow their government in 1961 with the Bay of Pigs invasion. So they decided to work together, and the Soviet Union put nuclear missiles in Cuba that could strike any portion of the United States.
Leading up to the crisis continued. As a result, the Soviet Union felt they needed missile sites that could strike at the United States. At the same time, the Cuban government wanted protection from the United States. They decided to work together and have the Soviet Union put nuclear missiles in Cuba that could strike most any portion of the USA.
All right, so how did this crisis begin? How did the United States find out about it? Well, on October 14, 1962, an American U-2 spy plane was flying over Cuba, and they captured pictures of long-range Soviet missiles in Cuba. Right here is the picture, one of the pictures of that. And it was a crisis like never before. These missiles, like I said, they could reach any point of the United States with the nuclear warheads, causing mass destruction. So the government did not take this lightly. They were upset about it, and they wanted to do something about it. The United States government did.
How did the crisis begin? On October 14, 1962, an American U-2 spy plane flying over Cuba captured pictures of long-range Soviet missiles in Cuba. This was a crisis like never before. The missiles could reach any point of the United States with nuclear warheads, causing mass destruction.
All right, so President Kennedy, this man right here, which we talked about, we went over his biography, his president during the time, he called a meeting with his main advisors, and they considered a number of options. One of them was diplomacy to a full scale. One of them was invasion on Cuba, full scale invasion on Cuba. The Joint Chief of Staff voted to invade, but Kennedy felt, hey, if we do this isn't really a viable option because it could lead to nuclear war. So he was concerned it would start World War III. And so he opted to set up a naval blockade to keep these missiles from coming in to Cuba.
How it began continued. President Kennedy called a meeting with his main security advisors. They considered a number of options from diplomacy to a full-scale attack and invasion on Cuba. The Joint Chiefs of Staff voted to invade. They felt this was the only viable option. However, Kennedy was concerned that this would start World War III between the U.S. and Soviet Union. He opted to set up a naval blockade.
All right, so he announced his plan on October 22nd. He showed the world the missile bases and said the United States would be putting Cuba under quarantine, which is what they did with this naval blockade. No offensive weapons will be allowed to enter Cuba. He also said any attack on the U.S. from Cuba would be considered an act of war from the Soviet Union as well. So over the next several days, I said it was like 13 days or something like that, it became more and more intense, and the Soviet Union said they would not back down. And so by the 24th, Kennedy believed the U.S. would have to invade Cuba.
Blockade. Kennedy announced his plan on October 22nd, 1962. He showed the world the missile bases and said that the United States would be putting Cuba under quarantine. This meant that no offensive weapons would be allowed to enter Cuba. He also said that any attack on the U.S. from Cuba would be considered an act of war from the Soviet Union. Over the next several days, the crisis became more intense. The Soviet Union said they would not back down. By the 24th, Kennedy believed the U.S. would have to invade Cuba.
All right. So the Soviets were publicly saying, we're not going to back down. But secretly, they were negotiating with the United States. Well, they didn't want to make it look like they were weak to their, not only to their people, but to the rest of the world. So they said, all right, we're going to say publicly that we're not going to back down, but we're going to negotiate with you privately. Eventually, the two sides, they reached an agreement. The Soviet Union would remove the missiles from Cuba as long as the United States agreed to never invade Cuba again, and also remove their nuclear missiles from Turkey and Italy. And they came to an agreement, and that's what the agreement was. For they would remove their missiles from Cuba if the U.S. removed theirs from Turkey and Italy. And with that, the crisis was over.
Negotiations. Although the Soviet Union was publicly saying they would never back down, they were secretly negotiating with the United States. Eventually, the two sides reached an agreement. The Soviet Union would remove the missiles from Cuba as long as the United States agreed to never invade Cuba again. In secret, the U.S. also had to agree to remove their nuclear missiles from Turkey and Italy. The crisis was over.
All right, so results of this crisis. The crisis was President Kennedy's greatest moment as president. The Bay of Pigs failure, people had lost confidence in his leadership because of the Bay of Pigs failure. It had come into question. So with this happening and him coming to an agreement and stopping a possible nuclear war, the world could be confident in the United States leader again, or the United States people could be confident in their leader again. So it put confidence back in John F. Kennedy.
Results of the crisis. The crisis was President Kennedy's greatest moment. After the Bay of Pigs failure and the Berlin Wall, his leadership had come into question. The world could feel confident in the leader of the United States again.
All right, comprehension questions. Well, if I can get this to move up. In what country did the Soviet Union put nuclear missile sites that could hit any target within the United States? What country did they put them in? A, Cuba, B, Brazil, or C, England? It was A, Cuba is where they put them.
Ding, ding, ding.
Cuba's only 90 miles from the United States. Number two, who was the leader of Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis? A, JFK, B, Fidel Castro, or C, no one? It was B, Fidel Castro was the leader of Cuba at the time.
Ding, ding, ding.
He is allied with the Soviet Union. Number three, who was the president of the United States during the Cuban Missile Crisis? A, Abraham Lincoln, B, Fidel Castro, or C, JFK? It was JFK. He was the leader of the United States during that time, the president.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
John F. Kennedy is what JFK stands for. Number four, what did the U.S. agree to do in order to get the Soviet Union to remove the missiles from Cuba? A, remove missiles from Turkey and Italy. B, do a blockade, or C, send over a spy plane. It was A, they had to agree to remove missiles from Turkey and Italy. Also, never to attack Cuba again.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
All right, that's all of our comprehension questions. I will see you next time. We'll be back. We'll be talking about Ronald Reagan's biography, and then we'll talk about the collapse of the Soviet Union, and we will be done with the Cold War unit. I will see you all next time.